I know the phrase foreign films is considered outdated, and that's why the Academy changed the category from Best Foreign Language Film to Best International Film. But this video is for anyone who either refuses to watch movies with subtitles, or anyone who's only ever seen movies that are in English and wants to branch out. So I think in this case, calling them foreign films makes sense, because they're foreign to people who only watch movies in English. I've met quite a few people who refuse to watch movies that aren't in English because they, and I quote, don't want to read a movie. So before I get into the 5 foreign language films I'd recommend, I think for people who claim they don't want to read a movie, a good place to start is with movies that are in English where characters also speak other languages. So the whole movie isn't subtitled, but it's just enough to ease them into the idea of watching a movie with subtitles. The first one that comes to mind is John Wick, because it's an exciting action movie with a lead actor everyone recognizes, but there are also plenty of characters that don't speak English, and the subtitles in this movie are done in such a stylish way that I feel like a lot of people don't even realize they're technically reading a movie. I bet at least one person will skim through this video instead of watching it and be like, John Wick isn't a foreign movie, what are you doing? But some other good options to ease people into subtitles are movies like The Farewell or Everything Everywhere All at Once, where bilingual characters casually alternate between languages. Moving on to honorable mentions, Revenge is a French film and a good one to start with, unless you're squeamish and don't like seeing a lot of blood in movies, but there's a mix of English and French spoken in this one, and there isn't that much dialogue in general. I've tricked people who refuse to read a movie into watching this one before, and I don't think they even realized it was a French film. Similarly, this one's more dialogue driven, but the characters in Anatomy of a Fall speak English quite a bit, that I've tricked people into watching it who didn't even realize they were watching a French film. 3 more honorable mentions. I feel like these 3 films tend to be a lot of people's first real experience with international cinema, and they're universally loved, so they feel like good ones to start with, and those are Amélie, City of God, and La Haine. Moving on to the 5 movies I'd recommend starting with for anyone who is new to watching movies in languages other than English or who doesn't like the idea of reading subtitles. I'll start off with Parasite. I know it ended up being overhyped, which tends to happen with movies that are unanimously revered, but there are valid reasons why this movie is so loved. And I think anyone could love this movie, even people who've never seen a South Korean film before. I've successfully convinced almost everyone I know who claims they don't want to read a movie to watch Parasite. My mom is one of those people, and I started rewatching the movie in front of her because I knew if she saw enough of it, she'd be intrigued. And sure enough, she ended up watching the whole thing and agreeing with the praise. This movie has such an interesting setup that you can't help but want to see where the story goes, and it does such a great job of holding people's attention, especially because there's a huge genre shift that happens that was kind of unexpected. Coincidentally, this movie will be back in theaters next week. Run Lola Run is also a great movie to start with. It's an action-packed thriller that almost feels like playing a video game, because you get to see multiple versions of the same story where some slight changes result in dramatically different outcomes. There's never a dull moment, and it's only 81 minutes long. Plus, if you prefer watching a movie with some familiar faces, you might recognize the film's star from The Bourne Identity. Battle Royale also has plenty of action, and this is another movie I've successfully convinced someone who refuses to watch foreign films to watch. I actually made a deal with someone who wanted to watch The Hunger Games that I'd watch it with them if we could also watch Battle Royale. I basically had to do a whole presentation where I showed them how similar the 2 movies are before they finally agreed, and they ended up liking Battle Royale more. Pan's Labyrinth is a perfect film to start with. It was influenced by fairy tales, so it provides a comforting sense of familiarity while also deviating from the fairy tales you're used to and building this fantastical world all its own. I didn't want to have 2 Japanese films on this list because I feel like I should have opted for more variety, but I couldn't leave out Ikiru. This is another one I've managed to get a few subtitle haters to watch. I know I'm biased since it's my 3rd favorite film of all time, but I think it's one of the greatest films of all time. The first time I saw it, it won me over immediately, because at the beginning there's this narration that's basically like, hey, look at this guy living his miserable, monotonous life. He might as well be dead. And I'm not used to seeing movies where the narrator is just bashing the protagonist like that, so I was instantly intrigued. And then as the story went on, it was one of the most inspiring, life-affirming films I had ever seen, and I already knew it was going to be one of my all-time favorites. And then it does some stuff narratively that I wasn't expecting. The narrative structure of this film is fantastic, and it's such a personal human story that anyone can see themselves in it, or at least feel something when they watch it. Just truly one of the greatest films ever made.